down, yeah. Coming off down. Come on. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are about to commence the third presentation of the morning. Is the Zoom on? Are you there, everybody? Somebody, Mike, for example. Can you hear?
I can hear you, and the screen has got mindfulness from Zen perspective
Yes.
on it.
Mike, wonderful, thank you.
Show grid video. Show thumbnail video. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, over to Barbara Gabrys with mindfulness from the Zen perspective, or a Zen perspective, or Zen perspective.
Any perspective. Right, I will be quick because I know that by now everybody's thinking about lunch. So that's the, I try to be quick. Now it's, I'm indulging here myself because it's something which over the years of my Zen practice and then mindfulness teacher became more and more uncomfortable. How do I marry those two different approaches, which very often are put into the same bag? So I wanted to have a very quick look at where is the place of mindfulness in traditional Buddhism and how to adapt it to modern life in the West. How did mindfulness become panacea for all ills of Western civilization? A quick fix, and it's available on NHS in the UK. So you can see how far it went. And in my view, it's no good, no bad. It's the Zen perspective, my Zen perspective. My interest for many years was how to make a bridge between what's the best in the East and what's the best in the West. We cannot forget that lots of cultural things like Buddhism are very, very firmly rooted in the feudalism in East Asia. So this is most of it is truly not directly applicable to our Western capitalist or socialist democratic world, whichever you want to call it. So how did it come about? 2,500 years ago, there was a historical personage who was from the Shakyamuni clan called the Buddha. Later, he was a prince and was very much protected. That's of half legendary stuff. You may know it. If you know it, just fall asleep for a minute. The Buddha has left his cozy life, became an asset for 6 years. It didn't help. Finally, he realized that there is something like a midway between indulgence and asceticism. And he had what we call enlightenment, and then he formulated the 4 noble truths. The first is that there is evidence of suffering, and that's old age, sick person, poverty, and of course death. So what is the case of this suffering? He didn't go into any sort of economic analysis or sociological analysis, but the cause of the suffering is our ignorance. Is ignorance of our place in the world, of the works of the universe and how we fit into this big scheme of things. So, and being a very, very good psychologist in our modern parliaments, he designed the course to follow. And the remedy to suffering is to follow the Eightfold Path. And it is actually grouped in 3 categories. So the first one is right view and right intention. Second is so that forms wisdom. Then we have conduct, which is right speech, right action, right livelihood. And finally is meditation, which is right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. So you can see that mindfulness is not separate from any other things. The way we live our lives, the way we conduct ourselves, And right or correct or clear speech, for example, would be don't lie, tell the truth if you can. And right effort, that's a little bit different and difficult. But right intention is again something which is very important from the Buddhist point of view. The right intention determines right action. And I'm sure that in our daily lives, we have every day similar problems, similar things to solve with intention and action and consequences. Because obviously every action has consequences. So by extension, every intention has consequences, though we may not see it. And here, what is very important to see that in the principle, mindfulness has seventh place, the penultimate highest place in this scheme of our conduct, which means that it's not linear. It's sort of, I prefer to see it as interplay of different factors. If we have the right intention, there follows right action, and from right action we can derive, for example, the right intention and right livelihood. That was very important, and this very difficult one, because then there were prescriptions. For example, being a butcher was not the right livelihood because it takes lives. But trading in arms was not seen as a right livelihood. Or selling alcohol is not seen as the right livelihood in the traditional.
Usury?
What?
Interest.
Usury, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
also not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all things which I would say exploit others in an improper way would be not the right livelihood. Okay. Now, and that is what we need to remember, that it was all very good for the monastic communities. That was how it was originally set. Yes, and there was a requirement for monks, the aspiring monks, to leave their families, leave all the ties, family ties behind them, and became member of the sangha, which is the monastic community. So obviously not everybody could have done it. And as an aside, that's why there are so few known women who were great masters or leaders, because they simply couldn't leave their family. It's as simple as that. I don't want to go into the fact that it's patriarchism or not. That is historical truth, yeah? So we shouldn't accuse people from 2,500 years ago that they were misogynists, right? Completely different scene. So, but the point is, now we are here lay people, and I'm ordained as a Zen master, but I choose to work as a lay teacher, and simply because this is my way. And how do we lay people practice mindfulness? You don't need to be ordained, you don't need to be a Buddhist, because what Thich Nhat Hanh, this is Vietnamese master, one of the greatest Zen masters which lived in our century and the 20th century. He says, my answer is to keep your attention focused on work. Be alert, able to handle ably and intelligently any situation which may arise. This is mindfulness. There is no reason why mindfulness should be different from focusing all one's attention on one's work, to be alert and to be using one's best judgment. Mindfulness is the miracle by which we master and restore ourselves. And there is a beautiful little booklet, which I highly recommend, which is called The Miracle of Mindfulness. There are other definitions of mindfulness, but to my mind, this is truly the best one. Okay. So we now look into secular mindfulness because that's what we have now around. I bet that everybody heard here the word mindfulness, maybe up to here. So I'll be very brief on that. So what is behind that? The Eightfold Path is a way of life which is based on ethical principles. And in all times, in order to do that, it was the lifetime work. You had to study sutras and sort of be guided by principles and so forth and so forth. And not everybody wants to lead a religious life. And especially when the West became interested in Buddhism, which is sort of second half of the 19th century and 20th century, there was a very big interest and very big exchange between especially Japan and the West. We had the Burmese Buddhist monastics, which included two prominent teachers, Ledi Sayadaw and Mahasi Sayadaw. And they created something which did not exist before. They called Vipassana meditation, which was very much suited for the lay people. And this Vipassana trend was transferred to the US by the first generation of Western teachers. Bang, we are now into what you could call useful Buddhism or useful mindfulness, because Buddhism already was sort of very much down, there was not much of the mention. And that formed basis for John Kabat-Zinn's system of mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR. And that was developed at UMass in the 1970s and later. As an aside, when John Kabat-Zinn had this idea, he was actually practicing Buddhism, but he realized that in order to bring benefits of mindfulness to more people, you have to secularize it, because people would be turned off by any term which is Buddhist or Catholic for the matter, yeah? So it had to be, and John Kabat-Zinn actually was a postdoc when he had this idea, and look where he is today. So I used to always, as an example, to tell postdocs, never despair. Your work can still become one which makes the world. And so mindfulness got secularized. And that was initially used as stress management and pain management. And it's not pain relief, it's pain management. And this is extremely valuable. I mean, this is fantastic work that he's done. I mean, I can't praise it too highly, because it helped people to cope, people with chronic disease, yeah? Of course, everybody of us has now and then pains, but if they go away, it's fine. But if we have chronic disease, and I have the personal experience because I have hip replacement. And before hip replacement, there was no medication which could ease the pain. So the meditation was the only way which allowed me to manage the pain before the operation. So it really works. And and there is actually quite a lot of documentation on the benefits of it, and initially the courses were 10 weeks long for people, and 45 minutes a day, every day meditation. And of course, they continued to take medication. There was later longitudinal study after 18 months, and I think after 4 years, which showed that people who continued to do meditation, they could cut back on medication and they didn't have relapse. And that was statistically significant result. But then, of course, it became a big explosion, and it moved beyond medical environment to schools, universities, companies. Google was using mindfulness in one of or other form to the military and to prisons. And it also became an essential part of self-care and self-help literature. Now you cannot dodge adverts for mindfulness anywhere. How to mindfully improve your sport, your performance, your sharpen your mind, etc. And that, of course, you know, I mean, we live essentially in capitalist societies, so that was, of course, the opportunity, so proliferation of mindfulness teachers. I should not criticize them because I'm one of mindfulness teachers, though I have undergone the proper training, and I have 40 years of Zen practice behind me, so I feel reasonably okay with myself at this point. But the problem is that there are people often with very little their own meditation practice. And why it is important, if you get people who engage sincerely with meditation practice, it may well be that they get much worse than before they started, because suddenly they open up, they become aware of their problems, and you could hear, she is a real shit, you know. I felt bad before I came to her courses, but now I feel really bad. So that's another thing which is very much, which is hardly ever advertised, that meditation is not always good for you, but in the long run, it may well be, yes. And I say may well be because meditation is not for everybody. There are lots of other techniques which can help. Right, so to show you an example, which I've done several years ago. I had a grand job of academic advisor to mathematical, physical, and life sciences division, MPLS for short, at Oxford University. Now, Oxford has 4 divisions and 1 continuing education board. MPLS is the second largest after medical division. And we have 10 departments, sort of A to Z, computing to zoology. And materials, where I am, fits in one of them. There is physics, chemistry, blah, blah, blah. So we had at the time a program, Building a Successful Career in Science, that I co-designed with Professor Jane Langdale from Plant Sciences. And I was doing, as you can see, the introduction and longer courses in colleges and also for the division. It was the official part of the program. At the time, I was unduly proud of it because I did force university a little bit to accept it. It was the look down a bit, you know, what is she up to, who needs that? But as a part of the program, which already had soft, quote unquote, components, that was quite accepted. And I worked mainly with postdocs and PhD students, and they found it very helpful because my focus in that was, okay, first of all, how do you cut distractions? And nothing, not at all at any moment of empty your mind. This is nonsense, and this is completely wrong view on meditation. But how you cut distractions, how you can focus better, how you organize yourself better. And it was, as a part, it fitted with the rest of the program when we did very mundane things like to manage your time or whatever, yes? So then I retired in 2015 from that, and the program went to the department rather than being run by the division, and now I'm only teaching a couple of colleges, and especially after pandemic, that became quite. So one thing I'm doing today, only an introduction to a problem that I'm working on, which I hope to report next year much more in detail. Because one of the principles underlying the benefits of mindfulness is that we accept neuroplasticity, that our brain can change. And this is now a veritable big, murky domain, yes? Because it is, if meditation can change the neural path, relaxation can change neural path, and you know, psychedelic psychedelic drugs change neural paths, and they can give very similar results to the results of meditation. Actually, there is I haven't got reference to hand, but there is there is a little study which shows that 20 minutes a day on the sunbed also changes neural paths. So, all right. Can we? The bigger problem behind it is it's very important and very nice to find out what meditation really does for our brain, but brain is not mind, yeah? And secondly, how can we trust the interpretation of results? I've done a PhD in experimental physics using nuclear magnetic resonance, and I work on very simple organic molecules, and that was bloody difficult to interpret, let alone something which comes from the MRI scanner. Yes. How and then if you look at the current literature, how do you distinguish between types of meditation? It changes when you have open eyes, it changes when you have closed eyes. And if you meditate in a group or if you meditate on your own, and you normally try to meditate in a silent surrounding, and then you are sort of pushed into MRI scanner, which is a very noisy place. Yeah, so it's all very complicated, but I think it's good that it started to work. Neuroscience still has a long way to go. That's my personal view. And I've done actually study with experimental psychology on the course participants, not only at universities, but also working with another Zen master, Julian Dyson Skinner. We look at general population. And looking at the self-assessment questionnaires, now you know, of course, that it has inherent bias. That is, and it makes me think, you go to the doctor, your GP, and he asks you, are you exercising? Yes, of course. Well, getting the remote control to switch on TV, right? So we are very prone, maybe not to lying, but sort of slightly distorting reality in our favor. So and I'm working now on evaluation of this project, which is influence of mindfulness, meditation, and life satisfaction. And I can show you the one of the questionnaires, because we had a battery of questionnaires. So that's mindfulness attention mass. It's one of the questionnaires which is very legit. We use literature with quite a lot of similar questionnaires. Can you read it also, because there are several questions, and I will read only a few. I could be experiencing emotion and not be conscious of it until sometime later, and the answer is on the scale of 1 to 5. So 1 is almost always, the second is very frequently, the third is somewhat frequently, 4 is somewhat infrequently, and 5 is very infrequently. So we would use these questionnaires before and after course and then compare results. And initially we didn't have a control group, and now again this is very thorny issue, because you know that in medical research you need a control group, which is very easy if you are testing a new pill. Yeah, you divide people into the groups, and they do not know who gets a pill and who gets a placebo. And then often people who run these trials, they also have double-blinded trials, so they don't know which group gets placebo and which group gets the real pill. And then, of course, the results are pretty reasonable. Now, with mindfulness meditation, it is not almost not possible, because people who do meditation, they know they are getting meditation. As simple as that. And it's even worse. There is what I call inherent bias, because they are already favorably disposed towards meditation. And people in the control group, we found small groups of people who are doing walking, but again, they were quite favorable, disposed to anything which would improve their feeling about their lives. So I've done a proper statistical analysis using one of the programs, SPSS, which, you know, it throws you a lot of standard deviations that you can interpret, and so, but it's almost impossible to account for this inherent bias. I was even looking into multi-level analysis, which is somewhat better, but for various reasons I had to stop. Now I'm coming back to that, and I think we can evaluate the results if we say that we have qualitative results from these trials. And I'm sure that my colleague, the now retired Professor Marianne Martin, she will be up in arms, because she will say, how come, why qualitative? We have all these, you know, standard deviations and everything, and we've done it properly. But I hope to convince her that is not the case. So just run quickly through this questionnaire. You will have it, of course, in the recording. And one important thing is that here, mindfulness is more or less equal to attention. And as we have seen in the beginning, it's not the same thing. But we can only test attention. We can't test mindfulness. So that's another thing. And in some of the clinical trials, it was very clearly specified we test bare attention. Yeah. And you can actually have very nice computer tests on attention. You have people who do meditation, people who don't meditation, and you run, say, series of numbers on the screen, and they have to press the button when they see a given number, or when there is a flash on the screen. Yes. And the idea is that people who meditate can focus better and have better results. That's one of the ways of being a little bit less biased towards interpretation. I will finish in a minute. So that's and I forgot person's name almost as soon as I've been told it for the first time. That's all these very practical questions. How can I? Yes. Yes, and I found myself doing things without paying attention. Oh, well, I would fail the test more often than not. And then, of course, we had participant number and date, and the questionnaires were anonymous. It was only me who knew how to relate numbers to a person. So data is confidential. And we had agreement of the University Ethical Committee for running these trials. And unfortunately, I have to keep the questionnaires for 15 years, because somebody can ask me, can I look at the data? Yeah. So this is, which is very good. I mean, but I have 3 boxes, you know, which stuck half of my wardrobe. Which I pray that I don't need to downsize, because that would be very difficult. So that's one of the questionnaires, and I hope to be able to tell you more next time, sort of in numbers, and also I'm at the moment doing the research for meta-analysis of this type of investigation, because if you look at meta-analysis of investigation of mindfulness, you will find out that, say, out of 600 papers, only 180 are accepted, because they have to fulfill quite stringent conditions. And also, one of the problems I have mentally is that typically the sizes of the groups are small. Yeah. Okay, somebody who is in statistics hang on, somebody who's in statistics could tell me, yes, but you have central theorem. If you have 20 values, you have infinite number of values, quite good, but it doesn't quite work on people, I'm afraid. So conclusions, mindfulness and meditation can be valuable way to help with modern ills such as stress, anxiety, distractions. But a short weekend or 8 weeks training will not work if not supported by sustained practice. And that's one of the big problems in these short courses, because people then left in the vacuum. And from Zen viewpoint, it misses connection to ethics, links to community, and the bigger picture, environmental concern, and how does the universe fit into us. I'm using it consciously. How does universe fit into us rather than us fitting into universe? And everything changes. So hopefully the mindfulness will be replaced by more wholesome approach to our way of life. And I would like to thank you for your attention. And thank you very much. Questions or comments?
I just wanted to ask,
Yeah.
mindfulness and meditation, if that's different from attention span or paying attention, is that, where does staying in the present fall into those two?
Staying in the present would be something like mindfulness. You could see that mindfulness, you could say that mindfulness is the basis of meditation. Yeah.
What's the definition of mindfulness?
Mindfulness is like offering your consciousness to the universe at any given moment, being present in the moment.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's and that goes really in instance, one by one by one. Yeah. Look.
In teaching a short course or training of this kind, do you teach people to meditate?
Yes. Yes. I mean, I come from the Zen tradition, and Zen has 5 levels of practice. The first level is just Zen meditation, which we call Zazen, for health and well-being. And we teach 4 very simple techniques. One of them is counting the breath. The other is following the breath. The one is actually body scan, where you move attention very quickly through your whole body. And that's actually what is done in John Kabat-Zinn related techniques. And then we have something like the practice of presence, when you just sit and allow everything to come, but don't attach to anything. So if you think about 8 weeks and of course we hope that people will do exactly what we tell them to do for these 8 weeks. So you have 2 weeks to manage to practice one of particular techniques, and after the course they do what they want, obviously. So, but that's very important. But you know, from my perspective, those are just tools. Yeah, but you have to master the tools. I mean, if I come to you and ask you, please teach me mathematics, you might not know where to start, but you would start maybe from the simplest and gave me exercises and examine me when I come back to know that you can move further and so forth. So it's very similar process, but it works on very many levels. Yeah.
The point about teaching meditation is that it's completely general. It is showing you how to direct your attention without any particular content.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
about that.
But what is happening actually, that out of every course, say I was restricting it to 15 people, then you have dropouts. So let's say you work with a group of 10. And if I was very lucky, 1 of 10 people wanted to continue and find what is behind it. It's almost like you wake up the spirituality in people. Yeah. And there is a big Oxford Mindfulness Center. They do extremely good work. They work with people with clinical depression. I don't do that. I only work with people who are sort of normal, quote unquote. No, I mean, I'm not qualified. If I already had in the classroom people breaking down, and you have to cope with it. You have to know what to do. So if somebody has schizophrenia or paranoia, I mean, you don't want to end up with a class full of Napoleons. So that these are very serious problems. So that's the way I like to emphasize. And of course, we have now disclaimers that, and I'm fully insured to teach meditation. And just as something which I wanted to say, but of course I always get carried away, was that the process in which mindfulness moved from Buddhism into secular world is very similar to that how yoga moved into secular world. Yeah,
For example,
very much the same. Because if you look at India, yoga was for
yoga.
spiritual yogins, yeah, men. Women hardly ever known, but men. And then when it moved to the West, you get sort of, you get gyms full of nice young women in leotards. Yeah, so that's completely different. There are some teachers who still teach a bit of. There is a lot of spiritual component to yoga. That's also a spiritual path, but it utilitarian, and that's not bad. I mean, gives you flexibility, gives you relaxation. So I'm not saying it's bad. It's just realizing how moving from an environment in which something was and thrived changed it. Yeah.
So disconnecting from your current thoughts and disconnecting,
Yeah.
it's like something that was always brought to mind when people talk about mindfulness and meditation, was that you can stay in the now, and so you can stay away from running away with problems and worries of the past. And future.
Yeah. I mean, looking a little bit deeper, of course, it's like you face your problems, you don't escape them, and you deal with them if you can, because sometimes there are such that you cannot do that at the given point in time. But being aware, and also very important for our work, that's why we call these courses later Focus Your Mind. Very important. You have a difficult problem, and you sort of think, well, I really want this cup of tea, or I need this little break for cigarette. And you just go away rather than saying, this is really hard, but I'm gonna work with it, yeah? And you may need this break, but at least you know why you are taking this break. So I think it's not a problem that we have to be. I have never seen, I mean, even Zen masters I worked with, the old Japanese guys who spent all their life in monasteries. They weren't in the moment 100% of time. It's impossible.
They had the monkey mind too.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, but you just know, okay, that's a monkey mind. So give it 2 minutes and then go back. So the way we teach is say, all right, the thoughts will come, distractions will come. So you go back to what you are doing, say breathing. And again, 100 times, 1,000 times, eventually the distractions are far less, yeah? Because there are always distractions. And sometimes it's quite nice, actually. The way we deal with it, say, don't attach to them, don't follow the train of thought, yeah? Okay, thought came, fine. And don't berate yourself, that's normal.
Judgment comes in a lot of times.
Yeah, that's what you need to detach from. You are doing meditation, and meditation, it changes from one day to another. There is never exactly the same way. And that's why I think I like doing it. It's always like, what's gonna happen today? Oh no. But you persevere and next day is better. Yeah. So in a way, it's very simple, but I hope it's helpful. Is anybody wanting to ask something? Or they are already on their lunch.
Can I ask one of those people something? It's nothing to
Sure.
do with this.
Okay. Yeah, so shall we close my
But
backward?
we don't want them to go yet. Tell
Okay,
them to stay.
so hang on, we're closing this session, and then Pete wants to have a word
With one
you both,
person.
or with one of you, so all stay, please. But let's say thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
I think we have to stop recording.
No, we can stop recording, yes.
No.
Yes. Albrecht, are you there? Albrecht, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm there.
Would you like to start earlier today? Because we've got a speaker missing.
Yeah, which time would it mean?
Start immediately after lunch.
So 3 o'clock.
Which will be
Immediately after lunch. Yeah, okay, it's possible, of course, yes.